Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatiron's Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Flatiron Syndicate Podcast. We are here today with a special guest, actually, a lot of special guests. We got Tasso from OTC Racing, Jeremy from Money Shift Rally, and then a face that is probably very familiar to a lot of you, Ron, formerly of Hoonigan. Now, I guess, is it Roncar? Is that the new everything?
That's Roncar has been my kind of internal nickname for quite some time,
Okay.
but yeah, starting to get it out there.
Yes, very cool. Well, so Ron, you've been involved with Hoonigan from darn near the beginning of times, and you've been like right involved in a lot of the stuff that Hoonigan has done. But as we're recording this, the Pikes Peak Hill Climb has just happened, and you drove a Hyundai Ioniq 5N up Pikes Peak. So we're going to get to the Hoonigan stuff probably towards the end, but we got to start at Pikes Peak because that is hot off the presses.
For sure.
And for that, I kind of want to go back to when and how you got into racing and how kind of you know, where you started and how it kind of progressed to the point where now you're driving a factory sponsored Hyundai up Pikes Peak.
Yeah, which is still, it's so crazy for me to hear that. I mean, I lived it, I experienced it, but man, what a wild thing to be able to say. Um, yeah, if I give a little bit of an abridged history, I'm first generation American. My parents came from Poland. So at the house, we didn't have football, we didn't have baseball, we didn't have traditional sports. In my household, it was boxing and car racing. And if you see my build at all, I'm not built for getting punched in the face. So,
Okay.
automotive racing for me, that was what really like it was so cool for me to watch, is the early 90s. So, watching highlight reels of Group C, obviously rally cars Group A at the time, was
Mhm.
dominant. So I always had a fascination with it. But it wouldn't be until about 2005 that I really started dabbling in it myself. I'd been living at home. I started working in valet in Atlantic City, New Jersey, beautiful,
Okay.
beautiful city that it is. Um, and, I saved up a bunch of money and I got a 2005 Subaru WRX. Mostly because my mom said, absolutely not. You're not getting some old used crap can. Like, you have to save up and get a reliable car. So I saved for 3 years, something like that, and got it. It was my dream car. I was watching Speed Channel. I had watched Petter Solberg win the 2000, I believe it was the 2003 World Rally
Hmm.
Championship. And it's like, man, that World Rally blue, the yellow, the gold, like that was it for me. That's the peak. So I got one, and in the glove box was a free 1 year subscription to the SCCA.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I've seen that. I don't really know what it's about. So I checked it out, and there was this thing called autocross. And I was like, all right, seems pretty cool. It's like $100 to enter. You go into a parking lot. You're not really like beating up on the car in a crazy way, but it's a fun way to start driving. So for those next couple years, I really started getting interested in autocross and learning about tire compounds and street class and stock class and all this and that. So I did that for a couple years. That evolved into open lapping. And, as I got into the racing industry, it's funny, they say the number one way to not race is to work in racing.
Oh
Uh,
man, that is
so,
truth. Yeah.
you guys, I'm sure, experience it all the time. So, yeah, it was. I took a back seat to driving in a way. I would get in a track day here, like a little, event here or there, but I just wasn't doing a ton of driving. It's where the sim came in, Gran Turismo at first, Assetto Corsa later. But as the years went on, I kept such an interest, but I was more a spectator to driving than actually partaking most of the time. Uh, Hoonigan came by, started getting more chances to drive cars around. Granted, it was in a parking lot, but we would kind of make like, oh, well, I write the creative, so we got to have a C8 Corvette on the track for this video. We just have to do it. So I
Hmm.
sneak in a little track day like that.
Nice.
Um, and then, when I left Hoonigan earlier this year, uh, me and my buddy Vinny starting a company called Driver's Era. We have to drive more. We can't be spectators to this thing that we're so passionate about. We got to find more ways to drive. And we had been working with Hyundai for many years, and they said, hey, we have this huge opportunity. We have four cars at Pikes Peak, and one of them, the showroom stock car, we'd like one of you guys to drive it. And it ended up being me that got the chance to do it. And I said, man, I'm scared shitless, but absolutely yes, this chance is not coming around ever again.
Wow.
So I said yes, and that kind of set me on the path to do the thing.
So Pikes Peak, I mean, I'm guessing you were familiar with the Pikes Peak Hill Climb, but
Yes.
when the call came down, like, okay, this is actually happening. You are going to be driving a car up at speed up Pikes Peak. What was the first thing that ran through your mind?
It reminded me of when we shot there in 2018. We had been there a couple times shooting Climb
Hmm.
Kana Pikes Peak with Ken in the Hoonigan. And we actually had to shoot that on three separate occasions. And that was my first insight into what it means to just exist at Pikes Peak. So the first time we had some car issues because, the atmospheric pressure and everything and the dry sump oiling that we had, the car was just shooting oil everywhere. So
Okay.
shoot one, cut short, came back, dialed in the car, shoot two, get 2 days, lightning, thunder, storms, cut short again. All we had to do was finish at the top, but the mountain said no that day. Like, I don't want to shoot. I'm throwing all this stuff at you guys. So we had to go back a third time. And I got a really good idea of what it means to be there, how high risk it is in certain corners, and just the nature of the mountain does what it wants to do. So I knew going in, not what it was like to drive, but what it was like to try and do anything there. It's a big challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that mountain has a personality all its own. It does what it
Absolutely.
wants.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'd say that given that you had that experience of shooting there and trying to actually accomplish something there, you had a lot more, awareness of those conditions and how inhospitable it can be than a lot of the other rookies, for sure.
Absolutely. And the respect that you have to give the mountain, because any wrong steps can mean a lot of damage. I mean, we had a moment where, Ken's car went into a ditch where most places, like a rally stage, you change a tie rod, you change a suspension arm, something like that. Here, it's like you go into a ditch at Pikes, it's like a cheese grater for cars. Like it just mangles everything. So you really, man, like you cannot put a wheel wrong on this mountain.
Yeah. And wasn't Jeff Zwart involved with the shooting of that? So maybe was he around for all of those attempts at getting the video shot?
Yep. Yeah, Jeff was our shooting Sherpa. I mean, without him, I think it would have been a very different video. His eye, his knowledge of the mountain, just having him there to be able to walk us through everything, anticipate, prepare. He was a very, very important part of that film.
Yeah. And it's especially even just for like being familiar enough with the mountain to probably tell you like this is where we should shoot, this is where we should not, and
Yep.
those sorts
Where
of
the good
things.
angles are. Yeah, all that
Yeah.
stuff.
So then when you get the call to work with Hyundai, to the best of my recollection, I've not seen a factory Hyundai effort up at Pikes Peak yet. So this was kind of their first go. I mean, would you say that
Reese Millen?
well, but that was Reese's, I guess they funded that, but I don't think that they were like organizing it.
So their history on the mountain is not sequential, but it does go back to 1992, I believe. They had the S
Wow.
Coupe, which ran in a factory production class. And then, yeah, there's Reese in the Genesis, Reese in his,
Oh yeah.
his kind of
Like
Pikes Peak
prototype.
specific. Yeah, the prototype. And I believe he won 1 year in the prototype, set a record for a bit. But, those were all very bespoke, tube chassis, crazy race car builds. I would say this is definitely the biggest effort that Hyundai has put towards Pikes and their first EV effort put towards it.
Hmm.
And that kind of goes into this thing that I'm seeing in the industry. It kind of seems like Pikes is in a way starting to become this EV battleground of showing what your car is capable of. You know, you have these records that are being beat every time we come out. Ford obviously putting a ton of effort in, Volkswagen with the IDR, and EV, you know, being what it is in motorsport today, I think Pikes Peak is the perfect place to
Yeah.
race EV cars.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've
100%.
talked a lot about that in the shop, that, there's all these challenges. It's a completely blank slate almost for EVs still.
Yes.
Like, there's been some really strong efforts, and it gives you a chance, or gives the teams that are running these chances to develop it. And it's also, the conditions are so different for an EV than a fuel car.
But
Yeah.
to the positive, it's like
Yeah.
one of the few motorsports events where an EV has a lot of advantages over a non-EV. Yeah.
Although that being said, there is the great, great challenge of having battery longevity to the
Mm.
top, not just
Yeah.
on, you know, state of charge, but also temperature. I mean,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, EVs are always going to be a bit heavier, and having something that's constantly under load. I mean, almost all of Pikes Peak, like 95% of it is very uphill. You're climbing a lot. So you're asking so much of the battery pack for that, you know, 9 to 11 minutes.
And one of the
And
things,
cooling.
yeah, I was gonna say, every time I'm, next to a modern EV in a parking lot, just at idle, it's got its cooling fans, its
Yep.
internal air conditioning system just going full blast. And obviously that's stuff that needs to be augmented for these kind of racing conditions. Although, that being said, I took a look at your vehicle, and I was like, wow, this thing looks like they just gutted the interior and put a cage in it.
That's pretty much all there was. I mean, it was our mods that we worked on were tires,
Yeah.
brake pads,
Mm.
and gutted interior and safety.
Okay.
Oh, it was stocks, like stock rotor size and everything like that on the brakes.
Stock
Oh,
rotor, stock caliper, stock wheel, stock suspension, springs, all of
yeah.
that is completely showroom on the
Showroom
two
Wow.
stock.
production cars.
Right.
Obviously, we have the time attack cars, which big arrow, all the stuff, but the drivetrain on those is still the same.
Wow. So you make an interesting point about EVs. So I want to back up just a quick second. So in all of the driving and the motorsports that you had done, had you before this driven an EV in anger on a track or anything like that?
Never ever.
Never.
I
Had had you driven
driven
an
around
EV
on the
much at
street.
all?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
barely any mileage. I don't think I've ever driven a Tesla. I
Okay.
drove an Audi e-tron, um, the Quattro e-tron, and then the Ioniq 5N or Ioniq 5, not even an N. But the first time I had driven on a track in an EV was the pre-production version of my competition car.
Wow. And when was that roughly? How far before the actual race?
2 months.
2 months. Okay.
Yeah.
2 months.
Yeah,
So
it was a very rapid development program. We for one reason or another, you know, it's a brand new vehicle. So we were waiting on the production cars to come from Korea. And essentially the second they landed at Indianapolis, it was barely out the box when, you know, they were getting gutted at the Brian Herta Autosport and getting prepared. And then they had to
wow.
come out to California to the proving grounds, Hyundai's proving grounds for us to really start putting in work on them.
Yeah, I was on my way to a rally in LA, or outside LA, and then suddenly I passed this thing. I was like, wait a second, this is a gigantic Hyundai proving ground slash racetrack thing. So
Nice.
how do the conditions there compare to when you got out to Colorado?
I would say it's not comparable at all.
Yeah.
It's a very different surface. The only thing I will say is now thinking back, now that you brought that up, there is a difference on when you first start at the track, it's covered in dust, sand, it's super low grip, and then as the day evolves, the grip builds up, you know,
Hmm.
as rubber gets put down and everything. And it's a very similar thing at Pikes. If you're one of the first cars to run up, still very dusty, parts of the track are cold because they haven't gotten enough sun on them yet. And then as the day goes on, you get a lot more grip through it. So that did help. But other than that, yeah, not a whole lot of elevation change. Um, you know, you're pretty much at sea level, so it wasn't a whole lot of direct comparison to the mountain.
Hmm.
But that being said, I mean, we still got a lot of really good info on how it behaves over bumps, how, the ABS is with this tire versus this brake pad. So the testing program we had there was still extremely valuable.
If you'd
Okay.
been listening, I mean, I assume you'd been watching on boards, paying attention to what people talk about this race. So you probably had some idea that the top section of the mountain is an ever evolving challenge.
Yeah. Yeah. No matter what you hear, no matter what you see on onboards, nothing compares to experiencing that in real life. The first time I ran, the very first run, I hit the straight going up to Cog Cut. And man, the car is just like in the air, down, compression, sideways, then up in the air again, and then brakes, turn, go through Olympic, bouncing all the way through. It's loaded up, then brakes, bouncing up there. It was what a ride. Yeah, that was crazy.
It's a good thing you have a history in rally then, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah, you deal with that all the time. Although I didn't have Rigers, so
Maybe
Yeah,
next year.
how'd the stock suspension do?
it was shocking at how well it did. No pun intended. But
Nice.
the car itself has all these different settings you can go through. You could set diff behavior, suspension stiffness and damping, power levels, steering input levels, all this stuff. So
And
we
and
spent a
you
good
had
amount
that?
of
You
what's
had
up?
access to all of that was unchanged from the factory, so you could play with all those?
Exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wild.
So that part of the development was, we had Paul Dallenbach on the team as kind of, the guide for the showroom stock cars. And, he has firsthand experience with the bumps up top. So
Hmm.
there's like a rough road section at the proving grounds. And so he went over that. He immediately just took like a street car over it. And he's like, this is what the car has to feel like. You know, do we do the softest setting? Do we do the hardest setting? And so factory setting number 3, full stiff, was actually what worked the best. And then we had an option to go 2 clicks down in case it rained and we needed more compliance in the car.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, the settings we ended up with after all of our testing, even on the mountain pre-testing was yeah, setting number 3.
Hmm. Wild.
Paul's a smart guy and obviously a ton of experience at Pikes Peak. I was super bummed to see that he broke his leg or something like that in a crash. I'm not sure exactly
Yeah.
what the injury was, but
Yep.
I was bummed to see that. He's another hill climb guy out here that I've raced against quite a bit.
Yeah, and just a name synonymous with the mountain. It was
Hmm.
it was rough. I mean, look, he was doing stuff that race car drivers do, right? Like I'm at the mountain, my job is to tell the story and to make sure the car goes shiny side up, right?
Right.
For Paul, he's going for a record. He's trying to show the max capability of what this car can do. And the margin at Pikes is so, so narrow, and race car drivers will push to the limit. And unfortunately, what happened was, we found that limit, and we were one car down after that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got
Well,
Randy Pobst, who obviously is another legend of
yeah.
the hill in general, right?
Absolutely. And Dani
So
Sordo, who WRC driver Sebastian Loeb's
absolutely
teammate for 7+ years,
right.
Yeah.
you have in the time attack cars, yeah, you have 2 extremely talented guys in there.
Yeah. And worth just noting that Paul, I mean, yes, he did get injured, but it could have been way worse. So very
Absolutely.
glad that he's going to make a full recovery.
Yeah, we were very, very surprised at how, the scale of the impact versus how well the vehicle took it. And, you know, we don't have a ton of experience in crashing EVs. And so you think like, oh man, like is the battery pack going to explode? Like, what's going to happen here or there? And it the battery pack completely, it sensed everything, shut itself off, isolated from the rest of all the other systems,
Hmm.
and there was no electric scare, no issue at all. It
Yeah.
yeah, it did
Were you
really
running any
consider.
kind of or electrical safety stuff in addition to the factory stuff, or was it all just complete factory safety systems?
Fire suppression. There's an
Yeah, so
EV
like
specific fire suppression system that targets, where the battery is, where the motors are. But other than that, no, it was all factory safety.
Okay.
That's,
And I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's been something interesting to see as racing series start opening up to EV classes and stuff like that. Like, uh, it'd be interesting to see what happens, what needs to happen for like an EV or EV related chassis to end up in American Rally. They obviously use the WRC hybrid vehicles in the rest of the world for a little
Yep.
while. And, so there's space for that in rally. It's just nobody's figured it out yet. And, safety is definitely one of those big concerns.
Yeah, safety for the driver, even for the environment in a way of, if you have an uncontrollable fire, how do you deal with that versus a regular car in a forest? The
Yeah.
response times are tough in a stage rally.
Yeah. Again, another advantage of Pikes Peak in that it is a relatively closed system. I mean, but yeah, the elevation I think is going to make it really challenging to get to certain locations. But
It does.
yeah.
And something I didn't really know until we competed this year, but Pikes Peak actually works with a local hospital. I think it's UC Health. And
Hmm.
so at any given time on the mountain when cars are competing, they have 6 physicians on the mountain at different spots so they can be a first responder and ride with the person to the hospital.
Wow.
So when Paul was going to the hospital, there was a physician right there with him, got him out of the car and rode with him all the way over. And yeah, I was like, man, they take it very seriously. You have to, right? But it's
Yeah,
good to see that you have that kind of safety.
for sure. Well, so what I was going to say is it seems like Hyundai just brought everything that they had at this, and they had a great result. I mean, you had everybody that drove a Hyundai that day had a great result.
Yep.
Um, do you get the sense that like are they going to be content with that, or do you get the sense that they're already thinking towards next year or other things?
I get a feeling that they know that they're very happy with the result this year, but there's other people looking at it, other manufacturers, and saying, I think we could beat that. I think we could compete with that. So I feel like they don't want it to be a one and done. They want to hold their titles that they have, and they know that competition is coming.
Hmm, interesting. Well, and you've worked with other manufacturers for various different things. I mean, how did did Hyundai's effort kind of compare with some of the things that you've seen other manufacturers put together for various different things? I'm thinking here like Audi with the Hoonatron. I mean, that was a pretty significant effort on their part to showcase a similar type of vehicle, but not in a competition sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It was I mean, look, obviously I'm going to say it was a top-notch effort because, not right now, but I was wearing a Hyundai hat while it was
Oh yeah.
happening. And I'm still doing some racing with them this year. But in a truly non-biased way, they teamed up with the Brian Herta Autosport team, and Brian Herta put together a team of guys. They had guys from IndyCar, guys from Formula E to, deal with all the electric stuff. They brought in consultants and people with tons of experience on the mountain. And every step of the way was just super professional. I mean, they really cut no corners and making sure that everything went really well. Bringing someone like Robin Shute in to engineer the cars. Robin's been king of the mountain 4 times, something like that. Between Robin and Paul, and them being completely open to their input and doing what, they said to do, I think was really, really big.
Hmm.
The other side of that too that I was impressed with was when you have a manufacturer that's not based in the US. See this time and again in manufacturers that I'm not gonna mention by name, but you have their foreign side, like the mothership in a way, and the US side. Communications aren't the easiest, right? Goals there are different than goals in the US.
Hmm.
And egos of marketing departments on either side, this one wants to take credit for this one wants to take credit for that. I think they handled that part really well too. We were working directly with Korean engineers, Korean marketing, motorsports, everything. And to me, from my side, it was pretty seamless. I was impressed.
Yeah, I mean, Hyundai seems to really get the motorsport side of things.
Yeah, they do a lot of factory effort motorsports, right? I mean, they have a lot of factory support, especially at least overseas.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
yeah, which, hey, that's nice to see.
To
I was
me,
gonna.
it's a similar feeling to like Volkswagen when they set their sights on the World Rally Championship. They did not mess around. They went in, they won a ton of stuff, and then they took their efforts and put those elsewhere. But wherever they go, it's full effort. It's we need to do the thing. We need to win. We need to be organized, and it's a genuine support system instead of feeling like it's like a side project.
With everything that you've experienced in cars, like working with different cars, different drivers and everything through Hoonigan, and then going through this experience, I mean, does this kind of what it seems to me like is that this kind of effort and what you described too with like Volkswagen for car manufacturers, this is kind of what they have to do to stand out anymore. Like it's not enough to just kind of wait in the wings and hope that somebody else or some privateer is going to take your car and decide like, oh, I could do something fun with this. Like they kind of have to blaze that trail themselves and do so like or the more that they do so in a big and successful way, then the more of an impact it has.
I completely agree. I think on a base level, the consumer today is a lot more educated than they've ever been, right? And it's a lot easier to see through something that doesn't really seem that real or genuine versus a real effort that's done correctly. I think the consumer genuinely sees and appreciates that kind of stuff. So to do something real like Pikes Peak, to create the content series that they've created around it, I think that goes a really long way. And people that maybe never even have an ambition of racing, their stock Hyundai or whatever, but they know that if they get that car, it is capable of accomplishing something like that.
I'm not gonna
That's
lie.
yeah,
Your effort had before your team's effort. I would not if somebody was like, "Hey, I've got this Ioniq 5N. You want to go to the track this weekend?" I'm like, okay, maybe."
Yeah.
Now I'm like, I want to try that thing out.
Yeah, dude, honestly, before I drove it, this is the same thing for me. I was like, yeah, it's
Oh, cool.
fun. Like it's good in a straight line, but man, this thing's 4,700 pounds. Like, I don't know how it's gonna do up the mountain. And even for us showing up, all the testing we did, thermal, battery charge, everything. When we showed up at the mountain, we're like, we don't know if it's gonna last all the way up. Sure, it was
right.
engineered to do 2 laps at the ring, but it's different than, racing up pikes. And that first time we went up and the battery still had just about half of its charge left, we're like, holy shit, like this, all right, this is gonna do the thing.
Well, and from what I understand, just from what I was able to glean, you guys didn't have any issues, at least not significant issues, where you would start off and you had full power, but then somewhere in the course of a practice run, or especially the full race run, where all of a sudden the power was the car was backing things down because it had to kind of control temperatures or whatever. Doesn't
Correct.
sound like
Yeah.
you guys had issues.
Yeah. Zero power cut on any of the cars at any point, which was to me the most impressive thing about the whole thing. Because, you have like a Tesla Model S Plaid, which makes 1,000 horsepower. But you later learn from talking to people, like, yeah, it was experiencing a power cut. Like battery got too hot, had to save itself, and so it brought things back down.
Oh,
We
that's relearning the lessons of all the fuel cars, which is that, oh, sure, making 1,000 horsepower sounds really good at sea level, and then when you're trying to climb the mountain, it's like, wow, it's impossible to keep this engine cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
Randy had said it in his summit interview that with the Plaid he only had 3 minutes of full power on his race run, and then after that
wow,
he was progressively
gradually,
pulling back all the way to the top.
damn.
And
That's wild. Um, yeah,
right,
I mean the engineering behind making that battery last that long, I think that's another thing that they were trying to prove there. So it did its job.
I have a very specific EV question, and then we can move on a bit. But regenerative braking, was the regenerative braking active, and were you able to utilize that, or was it turned off so you were just using the physical pedal?
Yeah, we use regen. On this car, the regen is kind of tuned in a performance way. So you have 4 different levels, maybe 5. We were on level 2. And the regen kind of works in almost like a vectoring way where you let off and you have some angle on the wheel, it'll assist your turn in a way.
Sure.
So for me, it was like almost like a little left foot braking kind of thing. So I kept it on. Yeah. And also testing so much, we tested full regen, no regen, and honestly, without it, it felt kind of odd. I really liked
Hmm.
having regen there.
That sounds like the kind of active torque vectoring stability systems you have in a lot of modern, performance cars too, right? So
Yep. And the cool thing is like it's not grabbing the brakes. It's just, using the electric motor as the reverse torque. So your brakes stay nice and cool the whole way. No fade or anything like that.
Yeah, when Tasso and I tested a Solterra for the first time, that was the regen braking was the first thing that I mean, it was totally foreign
Yeah,
because I'd
just
never
one
driven the
pedal
thing
drive.
before. Yeah.
Yeah.
And initially I was like, yeah, I don't like this at all. But by the end of the day, I was just like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I have now come to the point where I think it's really cool. And that's an aspect that you just don't, I mean, there's really no way to duplicate that with a combustion engine car.
Yeah,
John, are
you
you
kind of have to
dealing in EV
rewrite.
now, by the way?
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry, what was that?
Are you dealing in EV now, John, by the way?
I can neither confirm nor deny that, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
That's awesome.
that's fair. Um, that's really interesting. I mean, the craziest thing to me about that whole run, especially Ron, with you breaking down, like that literally was just this close to a showroom stock car that did that time. And you were within a couple seconds of our time, and we've been working for 12 years to develop our car to get to the point where we could be running sub 11-minute runs. And that's basically an off-the-shelf car that anybody listening, you could just go down and get one, and you have a very good fighting chance at being sub 11 minutes with very little effort is just it's just bananas to me.
Yeah, the car performance blows me away. And two things to kind of to amplify that was the tire that we're on, because we're on a 21-inch wheel. We couldn't size down. There's no race slick available in that size. There's
Hmm.
not any good option for us on even like a 200 tread wear track day tire. So we're on a Yokohama V107, which is like a 240 or higher tread wear. It's like a high performance summer tire, not even like a
Wow.
racing tire. So for it to be able to do that on that tire, and Paul, I know a course record is different than a race record, but on a course record day that we had, Paul did a 10:33. So I left a lot on the
Whoa.
table just being very safe. So it's you got to
Jeez.
drive one because it's like it's a car that just makes you laugh out of just how ridiculous everything, the whole experience is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. And I know you got your Hyundai hat on a little bit here, but as a Subaru guy, kind of from day one, and a rally guy, is your Hyundai your favorite race car for hill climbing right now?
No, because look, all right, it's a tough one, but if I have to go set a time, right? If I'm developing something to go do a record or beat someone's time or something like that, yeah, absolutely. Choice number one. Just like you guys said, developing a gas-powered car from showroom to do a sub 11 is a lot of work to be done. This, it's wild. Like we could do a couple little improvements and really bring that time even lower.
Hmm.
But for me, like on a very personal level, I love rowing gears. I love making noise with the car. Like I have a genuine passion for that. So, if we're playing the game of choosing your favorite race car of all time, yeah, it's probably not going to be an EV, but I'm also just genuinely shocked at how little you have to do to go fast with a EV car.
Well, and to be fair, that's because Hyundai has done a ton of work. I mean, I
Yeah.
think with that car, they have kind of set the bar now for
Yeah.
for what
And
they've shown what's possible, but they're
right.
kind of one of the very few that have really gone to that extent to make a car to make an EV that can do that for, as long as it is. I mean, they're kind of in a rare group there.
I would agree. And I think that really shows the work that they've been putting in because none of us in 2012 would have been like Hyundai Performance, fun to drive.
No,
Right.
But,
right.
they brought in Albert Bierman, of
Hmm.
BMW M car fame. And he really, like, you could see so much of the driver's DNA in a car. Like, this thing throttle lift oversteers if you put the settings right. They don't have to do that. In fact, it's probably not a great idea for the average consumer to be able to have that. But you can unlock those settings, and if you care about driving, it will drive like a car on gravel if you want it to.
That
And
that that's just one of those things about EVs that in a way it's almost not fair. It's like you're
yeah,
talking about developing your suspension. It's not like, okay, well, let's get under there and go 2 clicks in this direction, and maybe we're going to add 2 degrees of, or 0.2 degrees of caster or something. No, it's like beep, beep, beep.
ones and zeros. That's
Yeah.
it.
But I think without a doubt, I'm guessing, Ron, you had fun. You had fun with the whole
Yeah,
experience and
dude.
the race run. It was a blast.
Yeah, it was an absolute blast. Terrifying a lot of times, but yeah, I would do it all over again.
Wait, are you going to do it all over again?
Time will tell.
Time will tell.
I
Okay,
would love to. If I get the call back, then I'll probably end up saying yes.
nice. Well, and you mentioned that you're going to do some more racing through the rest of the year. Can you give us an idea of some of the other things, like maybe in that vein that you've got on the calendar?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I just got back from VIR from testing with the Jeff Rika team in TC America. So I'll be doing 2 rounds in a Hyundai Elantra and touring car, um, which is
Wow.
again like head first into the fire. I've never done wheel to wheel. I'm not really a circuit guy, but part of this whole story that we're telling with N and Hyundai is yeah, how capable these cars are with not a whole lot changed. Similar story. The touring car that I'll be racing is completely stock engine, stock chassis, just big brakes, race slicks, suspension, gutted, caged, a couple more things here and there, but really completely stock drivetrain that
Hmm.
goes for 40-minute races wheel to wheel. And with Jeff at the wheel, it's a really dominant car.
Hmm. That's awesome. Man,
Yeah,
that
it's
sounds like
such a
fun.
fun car to drive. And the biggest thing there is, I do really, really like, all the old school, like BMW E36 touring car, BTCC, WTCC, all those cars, like bouncing off curbs, slammed to the ground,
Yeah.
super low. And Jeff was like, you kind of have to drive this car like that. Grab a ton of curb, chuck it
Hmm.
into corners. And so that's been living out that dream for sure. It's been really
Heck yeah.
fun.
Hell yeah.
So I'll be doing VIR at the end of this month, and then I'll be doing Barber. I think it's in September.
Very cool. Well, and so, well, let's see. Before I ask a question, Tasso, you've been quiet. I know you've got questions. Throw something out there.
Okay. Here's what I've been thinking about as I've been quiet. Can you fit gravel tires on the Ioniq? If you can't, why can't you? And why aren't you coming hill climbing with us yet?
Oh man. Well, yeah, you and Jeff have really convinced me to go do some CHCA events, which I'm really excited to try and do in something. I think the biggest challenge on getting gravels on an Ioniq 5N is the brakes. We would have to find a way to size down the brakes to get a 15-inch wheel on there to get a true gravel tire.
Right.
Um, B, I don't know how a real gravel tire would do with that kind of weight.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but maybe it would be fine. And then I don't know how, like with all the regen stuff and everything too, if we'd be able to package a tire small enough. That being said, I know there's, that old, I think it's a Hoosier, like the Pikes Peak Special tire,
Yeah.
Oh
which
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. They
I
they
think,
weren't Hoosiers, but currently Hoosiers the one making them.
oh, got it, got it.
So
I don't know what the max size of those is that you can get, but looking at a tire like that, if we can get something on an 18-inch wheel, then yeah, we'd be
those
game.
things are pretty crazy. They're lighter than a rally tire for how big they are, which is something
Wow.
that because the sidewall
Hmm.
is super flexible on them, they have a ton of traction. Those guys run ATV like tire pressures in those things, like
Whoa,
single digit PSIs. Um, but they're obviously developed for those open wheel cars, and
for
they're
sure.
I don't know if that would solve your tire problem. There are some like 17 like retread gravels out there.
Mm.
I mean we're going off in the weeds on a technical discussion about
Yeah.
how to make your
Yeah, yeah,
Hyundai into
yeah.
a gravel car, but if there's
But that's the
anything,
biggest challenge
I'd
is
love to see that.
wheel size. Yeah,
I mean,
Oh yeah.
man, I would love to.
I'm super curious how the car would end up being set up with regards to the suspension modifications you're talking about, even that regen braking and torque vectoring thing. Because one of the things about a rally car is you are kind of expecting the car to behave in a really static way. you
Right.
know, you've got locked up diffs, and you're relying on how you make the car break loose and then regrip itself when you want it. And you know, what when we're driving factory cars, we're thinking, fighting the traction systems and stuff like that. So it that would be a development process for sure.
It'd be so interesting to see because I mean everything on that car has been tuned to
Hmm.
asphalt in a way,
Right.
right?
It's
So
all just ones and zeros, right?
yeah, yeah, I think
Yeah.
the engineers would probably be pulling their hair out for a bit, but who knows? I mean, maybe it would do well. I don't know. I'd be super curious to see. Kind of making me want to at least do a gravel test in one.
You should make
Good.
a call because Hyundai's got the WRC experience. I mean, and that was probably like another subsidiary company that's building those cars, but I mean they must have a pretty good handle on what, carrying speed on rough terrain is requires, and like to see could you adapt some of that to an Ioniq 5N? It
Yeah.
wouldn't be a terrible thing.
Yeah.
Hey John, can I
Yeah.
borrow a Solterra for reasons?
Let's not talk. Let's talk when we're not being recorded.
Sure.
Maybe.
The other elephant in the room I want to poke is the Hoonatron. I don't know, ownership for that car, or, obviously with Ken's passing and stuff, what happened to some of those projects, but are we gonna see that again? Can that run Pikes Peak? Can that run gravel? I
Oh,
mean, obviously Audi is synonymous with all these things we're talking about, whether it be rally or a Pikes Peak, and that
Yeah.
car came on the scene, blew some minds. And then I'm curious what it's up to, and what you can say about that.
Yeah, that's actually, I didn't even think about that, but that's a really good question. So Audi Germany owns that car. There are actually two. One is kind of like a displayed demo car, and the other one is the actual Gymkhana vehicle.
hmm.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's really like as the car sits right now, I don't think it would do an overly crazy time at Pikes. You would have to rethink all of the aero. I mean, it was designed to do Gymkhana type things, right?
Right.
I think it would do okay, but I don't actually think that it would get the time that we got in our time attack car.
Hmm.
Because it is, again, you're dealing with weight, power, longevity, all that. So I don't know. That's a good question, but maybe we should poke some people over there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put the idea out there at least.
Yep. If you
I,
need just a random dude to write an obnoxious email, I can be that random dude for you.
Okay. Hell yeah.
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 So, and Ron, I apologize. I did not bring you on to give you homework
No, dude,
Yeah,
listen,
but
if
that's
the
why I'm
homework
here.
ends up in any one of us driving something cool up the mountain, then that's homework worth doing.
for
Yeah.
sure. Well, so let's look forward now. So, Ron, you've been working in cars, doing things in cars for, gosh, close to 20 years at this point, 18 years,
15.
15,
Yeah, just
long
over
time.
15. Yep.
So you're moving in a new direction now. Let's talk about that direction. And I mean, what is interesting? What is exciting to you? I mean, obviously this is exciting, but what else? What else do you have on your agenda?
Yeah, so my buddy Vin from Hoonigan, we always had the most similar kind of views and likes in the automotive scene. So we started this little company. It's called the Driver's Era. And it's just our take of everything we've learned, everything we've done in cars, and kind of evolving it into our style. Like,
Hmm.
Hoonigan was very much burnouts, donuts, thrashing cars, building cars, all that. And that's cool. Like it, we lived it, we did it for quite some time. But both Vin and I are a lot more on the motorsport, racing, stage rally, road racing, endurance, all that. We really have a passion in that stuff. So we want to start exploring that world more, but in our, personal outlook on things and being able to tell stories in those worlds through apparel. So that's
Hmm.
kind of our goal coming up. And to me, it's a really exciting time because when we started out, kids weren't that into cars, or at least the way they are into them now. We came up in the action sports era where BMX, snowboarding, skate, all of that was dominating youth culture. And we got to watch really the massive evolution of Gen Z and even millennials to an extent being super, super, super interested in cars and building crazy stuff and doing all these things and how popular Formula One's getting and the trickle down of other motorsports getting popular because of that. It's a really exciting time for me. Yes, the market's getting saturated with all these different brands, but at the same time, like with the audience that we've been able to build personally and just our experience, I think it's a really fun time to explore what that next level is for us.
I mean, for some of us guys who, kind of feel like we've been off, in the corner screwing around with our buddies on the track or in the forest or whatever, it's interesting to see like, okay, now there's guys with followings coming out to do rallies who, aren't even factory sponsored. They're just bringing their brands there and they're bringing
Yeah.
attention to the sport, which is super cool. And that's always been one of the things is that yeah, I mean, I could enjoy the donut pit stuff and all that, but I also do enjoy watching at onboard or watching, hearing the stories of how you like just like this kind of story, how you guys got out to the mountain and how you did it. Is those are really meaningful to me, and I love the idea that those stories could reach a wider audience now.
Yeah, for sure. And there, even stuff like stage rally is my biggest passion. That's where my favorite kind of racing, what I've wanted to do forever. As you guys know very well, in the US especially, there's not a whole lot of money in it. It's not very easy to do. But man, some of the stories of like you got a gang of three dudes, you and your buddies, and you tore off a corner on a stage, and you are going to do everything within your power. You're going to weld, you're going to call people, you're going to go to junkyards, you're going to go to the parking lot, you're going to make that car work, and you're going on stage the next day, no matter what. That's such a cool story that so many kids that are just getting into cars, they don't know that exists. They don't know that like there's this crazy little world where you have Subarus and Evos and Fords, R2s, everything doing crazy shit in the woods, you know, on a driving level and on an engineering level. Like we want to put some shine on that too.
Oh, that sounds awesome. It's I love to hear that because we're in this weird spot right now, I think. And I don't know how many of you guys would agree, but like we're in a transition period. It's like the car manufacturers, they're not 100% sure what to do. Car enthusiasts are kind of like, I still like this, but I don't know exactly what to do just because there's been a lot of change going on in the aftermarket. And then so like the kids that are coming up, I think it's like there's not a lot of content like what you just described, Ron, to kind of like get people hooked, get people interested, like maybe there was 5 or 10 years ago. And so I'm curious to see how we come out of it. I just don't know.
I think we're primed for some of the best automotive times in a way, mostly because you look at also the transition of traditional media and YouTube and how kids these days have grown up being bombarded with advertisements and video and traditional everything. So they don't take well to things that, are traditionally like a film or, a big marketing campaign from a major company. They would rather watch someone that they could relate to have their own personal journey through something and then relate to it that way. So like drag racing. When we
Mm,
were around, like getting into cars and everything, drag racing was kind of like it was like an old guy thing. That's what your dad and all his buddies were into. Then you get guys like Cletus McFarland comes out and he, does his Corvette, Ruby, that whole journey from just being a street car to doing sevens with a H pattern shifter. Like that's crazy. And it made
mm.
drag racing extremely popular with young kids. So that's just the beginning to me, right? Like now you can start getting even more and more and more into these personal stories of people's journeys into rally or road racing or anything like that. I think there's a lot of potential in the world expanding that way.
It's a it's a crazy thing, and I got wrapped up in the Cletus McFarland thing, and even like I ran into him one time on a highway around here on what is that, Colorado Race Week or whatever they do,
Oh yeah.
Rocky Mountain Race Week. I just happened to, and I totally, it's my only like, I mean, meeting you the first time after watching Daily Transmission was a similar thing where I fangirled up and stuff. But it was a weird transition because I grew up like you watching Speed Channel and Power Block TV and all these kind
Yep.
of things, right? But suddenly these YouTube channels, they felt like I was part of the crowd. I was hanging out with them working on their Corvette. I was hanging out with you guys doing yard laps and stuff like that. And so
Yep.
that's like this explosion of influencership. And look at what it's done now to, I mean, look at that. The Pikes Peak broadcast was 80% Rob Dom fans,
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
few. It's
it
definitely
was
a few.
wild. And it's, you know, at first I kind of had mixed feelings about it because as you know, there's like, oh, you know, I'm a grassroots amateur racing guy. You know, why doesn't anyone respect me for, you know, how core I am, right?
Yep.
But then it's like, you know what? It's and not just from, you know, a cheap more eyes is more exposure, but also who cares? Like invite these people in the community. It's I did the same thing after, you know, downhill mountain biking. I stopped racing downhill right about the like initiation of social media and stuff like that. And I was like,
Mm.
ah, that's not going to go anywhere. These guys aren't real. And now it's dominated by, you know, the influencer and the social media thing. And similarly there, at first I was a little jaded. Like
Yeah.
I was doing it, you know, where's my following? Where's my whatever? And I had to remind myself, like, it's not about that, dude. It's about like more people having more fun doing more stuff, right? And if that's what gets these people into the sport, then just be a steward in any place I can be. You know, don't be
Yeah.
for myself, you know, don't be jaded. Instead, be available, be like, hey guys, welcome. Here's some
Yeah, be
cool
a
lessons,
steward
you
of
know?
the
Right.
sport
Yeah.
and bring them in the right way. Because yeah, when anything grows, especially that quickly, you're always going to have non-genuine people coming in and just trying to, get clout or they're in and they're out. You could see that. But overall, if you could be there and the people that are genuinely interested in it, you are making new fans. And then the aftermarket gets supported because there are people buying more stuff and there is more incentive to put more effort into all this. So there's a trade-off. Yeah, you do get some like not so great people, but the genuine fans that are left behind that may have never been fans otherwise, like that's the coolest part to me.
The
Yeah.
the new fans will surprise you. Where I live, there are several 18, 19-year-old boys that are like, that know me and they're like, oh man, check out my new Crackle tune. It's so cool. But meanwhile, like was the other year when I did the full 24 hours of lemons, I asked all these high school kids, hey, you want to come crew an endurance race? And they're like, oh, when are you doing that again? That was so much fun.
Damn, that's
Mhm.
awesome.
And
Yeah. And like that changes their perception on everything. And then that trickles down to guys that they talk to. And they're like, nah, racing's actually really awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And look at FanFest. Look at I just cruised down to FanFest this time, and I heard 80,000 people or something like that were going to be out
It
there.
was
I mean,
big.
that's a market. That's not a little grassroots motorsport
Yeah.
niche thing anymore, right?
And
That's
Hyundai sees
popular.
that, Ford sees that, Yokohama sees it, and then they're like, all right, up the marketing budget for next year. And that
Mhm.
helps us out. That helps everybody out. It's more to go around for the grassroots guys and the new people.
Yeah, be part of the positive spiral.
Yep.
Do you have any? Because you said, I mean, you want to do rally. You haven't
Mhm.
mentioned rally, but I hopefully that is maybe somewhere on your to-do list down the road. And capturing these stories. I mean, do you think that you can take this approach and maybe hopefully try and get a little bit more attention for some of these rally events that are not maybe as well known in the area as they could or should be?
It's my ultimate goal, really, with everything I do and even from the very beginning. I mean, one of the biggest driving factors of working with Ken was I was like, I want to do literally anything in rally, and this dude is in it. And the first thing he's doing that he needs me on is at Team O'Neill Rally School. Yeah, sign me up. So everything I'm doing is kind of in a way to try and a very roundabout way, but try and get me on stage and doing stuff. So I don't know if it'll be this year, but an absolute goal of mine is to compete in stage rally in America in something cool and tell that story.
Well, you're still doing rally sprints down with Texas Dave, right?
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, which are honestly like it's really cool to see what Dave's doing there because for a guy like me, rally's so prohibitive in a way that you have to travel far, you have to have a crew, a co-driver, a trailer, all that, street register the vehicle, transit, take tons of days off for recce and everything. At Dave's, you show up the day before, you recce the stage, and then the next day you race, and then you have Sunday off. So it's like a really, really good stepping stone in between school and a full-blown stage rally. It's like that's what's possible for me now as I build into trying to do like a bigger program.
Yeah.
I mean, at some of the American rallies, we see Hyundai, what are they, I-20Ns, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
The you know, the ERC class cars, those things, you know, some folks bring them over. They got them here.
Yeah. Absolute rippers. Yeah, it's a really good platform in general to rally with, and they've been developed over in Europe. So just like the Fiestas, it's a similar kind of thing.
Yeah. And see, now you can take all of that and you can like now merge in a Colorado Hill Climb CHCA event, because that's also like it's basically 2 days. It's
Yeah.
two
Make it part of the
days,
program.
make it part of the program. You can
Yeah.
shake the car down. You can get ready for Pikes Peak, because some of those hill climbs are high elevation too. Was it Tahoe Land's End? It starts at 9,000 feet, just like Pikes Peak.
Monarch gets
Monarch.
up to almost tree line. And it's very
Yeah.
steep. It's super hard on cars.
Yeah,
But I
that's
mean,
really
kind
good.
of to that point though about accessibility of an event, because stage rally is super daunting to look at. And for
Yeah.
anyone that, either, has some experience or is still looking at this, I think still for me, one of the toughest parts of a stage rally is, it was just my wife and I at the time, my girlfriend and
Yeah.
I, out there. We didn't have a crew, or and we no, so you show up for several days in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, you see some friends, but you're busy banging out recce and tech. And unfortunately, Viet like would take my car through tech at Rally Colorado and stuff like that, who was really there to support, Scott Crouch, right? Not me.
Right.
But still, it was like, oh, thanks, man, because it's the same time as recce. How do I manage to do both of these things, right? So
Right. Right.
logistically, they're very complicated weekends. You have to really be on your shit or your stuff timing wise, for the
Yep.
weekend. And then, you know, a large part of why I'm into the car racing thing is the community, right? I want to go
Yep.
out there and see my friends, see all you guys, bro down, have fun, stuff like that. You're spending all day in a car, whether it's recce or you're out doing your stage loops and stuff like that. Yeah, you see them at dinner if you don't have a corner to rebuild, like you were saying, right?
Yep.
But something like a rally sprint, like what Dave was doing at PPIR, with the grid life stuff or the CHCA stuff, I really like. Logistically, they're much less complicated weekends. You still have plenty of time to hang out with your friends and have fun and bro down, throw a high five, stuff like that. I think that's what makes them, I think, really friendly kind of feeders to, I still love stage rally. I don't have any plans to do any in the future right now,
Yeah.
just because of all those reasons, and financially it's a big burden. But some of these other kind of smaller events they're so friendly, they're so welcoming in terms of the people to get in there logistically, financially, they're amazing. And it's, as I was talking to Dave about that at FanFest, like
Yeah.
bringing like the bro party back to some of these things.
Absolutely. I
Um,
mean, that's
you
how
know,
we met, right?
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
I think you gave me some of your oil because mine was running low at the
yeah,
PPIR, the Grid Life
it
rally.
was running low.
Yeah, yeah, running low out of the window that I created in the block.
Yeah,
Um,
That
but
happens.
yeah, man. I mean that, you and I we were crewed in a close enough spot, and I was like, oh man, like we just got to talking, and you're like, oh, you need something? Like here, I got this case of oil. I'm not going to use it until next event. Like here, that's all you
right.
need.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I love that. I
and the,
love
the
that
cool
community.
thing that has to be said there too is it's an easier entry point, but all of that experience is still relevant. If your end goal
Yes,
is still stage rally, bigger hill climbs, bigger events, all of that experience, all of that car setup, all of that driving skill, and that all applies. So you're really
exactly.
actually building a foundation in a more reasonable way, so that you can actually have more success when you're
Yeah,
ready to take that next step up onto a bigger stage. You're going to have the foundation of the driver's skill and car setup, all of those things, car
yeah.
development, that will make you
Yeah,
more successful there.
I'll
you make a
shamelessly
great point.
plug. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to shamelessly plug CHCA for the last time, then I'll get off my thing.
Oh, wait.
Also,
Colorado Hill Climb Association.
yeah,
Thank you,
that's the
Jeremy.
one. I'm a class rep, so I feel it's my duty to say this. Um, but yeah, I mean, not just experience wise, but literally you can bypass the rookie requirement or the novice restrictor and stuff with the
Oh,
ARA,
no way.
by completing a series and petitioning to bypass that status by doing a season with the CHCA. So it's
That's
something I
really
worked with
interesting.
Preston on developing that to make it like, hey, come out. get some experience with us. We're a safe place. We're a welcoming place.
Yeah.
Let's get this done. And also it helps you kind of make it through that first hurdle with the ARA, or maybe you're having to, I forget what the novice restrictor size is now, like
I
2
think it's like
millimeters. So
32 or,
No, I
or
think it's
I think
small.
it's smaller
it's
than that.
small.
Yeah,
It's like
it's
36 or
yeah, it might as well be nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can work towards bypassing that. So it's anything I can do to help you out, let me know. Okay, that's it. That's my
No, I
soapbox.
mean, I think that's a really great point too, because you don't want your first full ARA week, so much time, resource, budget, everything, and then you lose out on it because you just weren't prepared in something that you would have learned on the one day, right? Like you make a logistical mistake or figure out that like, oh, I didn't have the right spares. You just missed a one day event. That's not too bad. But if you make the same mistake on a full-blown event, that sucks. You've put a lot into that just to lose out
Right.
on some, a
Oh, yeah.
learning experience.
Even doing like two CHC events where you're driving the same stretch road, let's call it the same stage for 2 days with
Right.
multiple runs, so you can try things. You can
Yes.
like, what's it like running a sway bar at this setting? What's it like running a sway bar on a softer setting? What's it like if I take the sway bar off? And
Yeah.
you can test and find out like, oh, this is actually what works best, or I like the way that this handles. You figure all of that out in that repeatable environment. So then you know what the car setup that you like is
Exactly.
versus a stage rally. Like you got on stage one, you do like 3 stages, you hate the car, you come in, you got what, 25 minutes in a pit, and you're like, it's terrible. Do something. Like,
And
Yep.
then you
And
could
then you
even
need to
make
eat a
it worse.
sandwich too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, Ron, so I got to say first and foremost, thank you very much for making the time. Thanks for coming on and chatting with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure, man. This has been
Yes,
fun.
we definitely want
Yeah.
to see you up on Pikes Peak again, and maybe even at a hill climb event, a rally event in the future. It sounds like you got a lot of exciting stuff in the works. For people that want to follow you along and see what you're doing, I mean, drivers are certainly, but where can people find you? Where can they keep up with everything that you're doing?
Yeah, for me, I'm mainly focused on Instagram because
Okay.
YouTube is a lot of work. It's very tough. I do appear on my buddy Vin's YouTube channel, which is a lot of the storytelling that we're doing too. That's Vin_Tra, TRA. And then our Pikes Peak story is on the Hyundai YouTube channel, Hyundai USA. So we have a mini series. The next episode is coming out in a couple weeks. And that's our whole buildup from starting from zero to everything that happened on the mountain and after. So that's on the Hyundai USA YouTube.
Very cool.
Sick.
So I will put up links in the description to everybody to follow along in
Amazing.
all of those
Thank you.
places. Yeah. Well, as running down here, guys, Jeremy, Tasso, any last minute questions for Ron?
There's this rally outside LA called Ridge Rally. It's
Yes,
really,
I've heard of it.
really great environment. A
Hmm.
lot mixed surfaces, beautiful vistas, some just like 5 miles of flat.
Which is nice. Yeah,
which is nice.
get
And
the
then
average speed way up there.
oh yeah, it's something else. Yeah. And that's later in the year. It's like a December race or something like
Okay.
that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Hey,
plenty of
maybe
time. Plenty of
if I
time to
squeeze
plan.
one in this year, that would be an awesome one to do.
I'd love to see you out there. We're almost certainly going to be out there for that, assuming,
Okay.
disaster strike rallies are unpredictable.
Yes, of course, of course. Yeah. No, that would be a really fun one. I missed out on that one. My friend Eliza Coleman and Alex
Yeah.
Ramos, two separate competitors. They're like, you got to do Ridge. I'm like, all right, okay.
I want to
Pretty
say
good.
that's a rally that was around, then it went away for like 15 years, and it's been back for the last couple. I think it's a regional again.
Yeah, I think it used to be Gorman Ridge Rally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots of good stuff out there in California. In fact, I think there's even a California regional rally series too.
Yep.
So lots of good events.
But that's
Lots of
not
small events.
CHCA, which, we're focused on now,
That's
boys.
true. Well, I mean, but
Yeah,
it's in your neck of the woods, so it's
yeah,
worth
yeah.
mentioning.
No, it's
Yeah.
nice. It's nice to have it close.
Yes. Very
I
cool.
appreciate the CHCA love. Um, Hey, congrats
Gotcha.
on the time. I was watching it. I got super stoked.
Thank you.
It's an awesome feeling to watch those live broadcasts and see your friends do well, all up and down that timing sheet. So you guys too, Flatiron, Scott Crouch, another personal best.
Yep.
So it's just
Incredible time for Scott. And
yeah.
funny story there, just a small one, but Harvey, Boost Creep,
Hmm.
he tuned one of my cars way back in the day.
No
I
way.
STI swapped my '05 WRX and
Oh yeah.
Thought I had a '07 block. I had an '08, had the wrong size spark plug. Harvey tried to tune it. It didn't, like, he got it working decent, but Harvey's an awesome, awesome dude. So when I saw him at the mountain, I was like, no way. I know
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he's an all-time good dude. I love that guy.
He's the
Yeah.
best. Absolute,
He's
super talented guy. And yeah, just a really good dude.
yeah, he
Yeah.
does all my tunes still. He's a
Oh, right.
yeah, nothing but love for Harvey.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was a massive help to us on the hill the first year running with that standalone that he had programmed, but just like having him on sites like, Harvey, it's flashing like this. Is that bad? And he'd be like, it's fine. Like,
Yeah, that one's okay. I'll turn it
yeah,
off.
yeah, exactly. Oh, that was something. It's trivial. So
Yeah.
your turn signal was on. It's okay. Yeah, so,
But yeah,
very
Scott's
cool.
time was super impressive up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's very very happy with it as he should be, and we're already kind of starting to think as you have to do. We're thinking to next year. What do we got to
Yep.
do to find some more time? So we'll see.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
H6.
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 Nitrous. Yeah, jet turbine strapped to the roof.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
let's be reasonable. Jeez.
Yes. Cool. Well, again, thank you so much for your time, Ron. Very best of luck. We can't wait to see what you got in the store. And as you do other events, maybe like, I don't know, a CHC event or something like that, we'll maybe reach out again and chat about it again.
I like that turned into the meme for this podcast. So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, that was the whole goal, really.
Yeah. Yeah,
Somebody's
let's
goal.
have Ron on to talk about my thing. Yeah, sounds good. Whatever.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
nothing but love.
yes.
Yeah,
Well, thank
but
you,
thank you
Ron.
for having me, guys. This was
Yes.
awesome.
Of course. And to all of you at home, thanks very much for your support. Thanks for listening as always. And until next time, stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning. Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.